drill, I'm not going to go through the whole fire drill. I'm told I don't have to. So there are no fire drills planned. So if you hear a fire drill, it is a proper serious fire drill. So and the routine, which I'm sure everyone's aware of now, is that the escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber. And should there be such an incident, Megan and I will try and lead the way for anyone who can't find the stairs. So I think that's really all we need to read about that. I've got apologies from Councillor Warren Drew. Other than that, there are no further apologies. So the next matter is the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes, and are there any points that anyone wants to raise, or can we agree the minutes? Thank you very much. So minutes are agreed. Any declarations of interest that relate to matters on the agenda? My understanding of that is that we've already declared our interests, as it were, formally, and it's on the website. But if there's any specific point that arises from any of the agenda items, then we should declare them ideally now. But if you forget or it doesn't occur to you until the report is being dealt with, then we can declare it at that stage. So I take it there are no further declarations of interest. Thank you very much. I'm told that there are no public questions. That takes us to number 4, no public questions. And I'm told as well, no members' questions at 5. So we can move straight to item number 6, which is the internal audit progress report at pages 13 to 28. I'm in the hands of the committee, whether or not the committee would like a brief summary of that report. I often think it's helpful because although we've all read the reports, it sometimes just sets the framework and can explain things perhaps better than the written word. But I don't want unnecessarily to take people's time if everyone feels that we can just take it as read and then ask any questions. So I don't know if there's a preference if people would like a brief summary of the report at the outset.
Chair, I always found it helpful to invite an officer just to highlight anything that they might feel that we particularly should look at. So summary should, I don't feel I need a summary, but if there is anything that the internal auditors want to just particularly bring to our attention, that would be helpful before we start quizzing them on things.
Certainly, Councillor Garrett. No, I think that's a wise statement. So if we may please just have not so much a summary, but perhaps a brief summary highlighting any particular concerns that we should be considering under our remit. Thank you.
Good morning, all. So I'll give you a very summarised version. The report is the standard format. The only thing, to be honest, that I would bring your attention to at this stage is the fact that whilst we have commenced the plan and we still intend to complete the plan as at next year to enable the audit opinion to be given in July approximately of next year, we are slightly below in our numbers. However, that is a deliberate ploy so that we can make certain that we can test thoroughly across the year in a number of our areas. So the next time we report to you, we should have moved a number of the other audits. Beyond that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Garrett.
Just one, if the Chief Internal Auditor could clarify, when you said below numbers, was that on terms of the numbers of audits that you're carrying out, or is it a capacity issue within your team at the moment?
We would normally have brought forward this time of year probably 2 or 3 completed audits, and those are in draft. It's not a capacity issue, it's where we start the plan during the course of the year. So I envisage we'll have a slight bit of catch up. So we're just slightly behind with what we'd normally complete.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from members? I have just a couple of questions, if I may, please, and that's simply really in the main this. At page 21, I see there, well, at the bottom of the, halfway down the page, as it were, under 7, there's a, well, no exceptions are raised. This is rated reasonable assurance due to delays in progressing delivery of the agreement. Could you just explain that a little bit, please?
Yes, and in actual fact, the director is in the room in relation to adult social care. The safety valve agreement is an agreement, obviously, with the Department of Education, and there aren't significant concerns from an internal audit perspective, but there is agreement between the authority and the DofE. And whilst we're saying we're not raising anything because delivery against that agreement is difficult, but there is no significant issues that we needed to bring forward other than completion of the requirements that sit within.
Thank you for that. I do have a couple more questions. I'll try and reduce it a little bit if I can. On the same page, the missing signatures, counter signatures from tutors. Can you just explain to me, it may be simply because I'm new to this committee, I don't entirely understand so does that effectively mean that a tutor has to countersign and they haven't been doing so?
In effect, yes, that does. And this is a grant payment that is administered by a number of external suppliers. So the authority is not able to make certain that necessarily all of the controls are implemented. That grant is now no longer in place, which is why we've not raised any other exceptions in and around this. But this is an outside party that did not obtain the required evidence. When it was first identified, it was raised with the various providers. But this is just a note that that wasn't obtained when we looked at it for the close down for this particular period. But we won't be bringing this back to you because that grant funding has actually ceased.
Thank you.
Just
Councillor Churchman.
I presume it should read fully compliant, not complaint.
Thank you, and yes.
I've made a note on that as well, but to sort of that you had actually amended the forms and that it had been reassessed should this be a future project as well, or things like this, that hopefully we could learn from that. So.
If the grant is resurrected, then yes.
I don't have any further questions. Does anyone have any further questions? And are we content, therefore, to, I think it's just a question of noting this report. We're all happy to note the report. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is another regular report that the committee sees. It's in the usual format. The report provides details of the council's current strategic risks in the form of the strategic risk register, which is attached to the appendices. The committee now will receive this report every 6 months in September and in March. The strategic risks were previously reported to Audit and Governance Committee back in July after a really thorough and full review. So there's not a lot of difference, I have to say, between that period and this one. Consideration of the recent changes to the risk register were taken to CMT, the corporate management team, on the 19th of August and finalised on the 16th of September. So it is as accurate and up to date as we can be. Happy to take any questions in terms of any of the detail held within it.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions from the committee? Councillor Critchison.
It's not really a specific question on anything. I just noted quite a few high risk ones that have got, I think, mitigation in place, and that hopefully in 6 months we will see a significant change in some of those. So I'll just keep an eye on them, really. Some of the education ones and yeah, a few of those, but that was all I had real points on. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Councillor Garrett.
Certainly, the one I really want to pick up on is the governance issues one. We are aware that the external auditor is paying attention to that as well. They've reported to that they're looking at our governance issues. So, and although the register is very much about officers and their mitigation and encouragement that they can give to us as councillors, I think there's something we as councillors need to really take on board around the risks relating to governance. It can trigger government to pay attention to us. I was, like you do, reading Spelthorne's report. It's a brutal report on the governance issues within Spelthorne. They're different issues from the Isle of Wight, but if we were to find ourselves coming to the attention of government, and government's fickle on these sorts of things, I think we'll hear from Mr. Penn, if we haven't already, about how the situation in Tower Hamlets occurred, that government paid attention even though things look to be moving in the right direction based on their peer review. So in a sense, I'm kind of highlighting it so it's on the public record that all of us as councillors on this committee responsible for governance will be taking a lead to encourage all of our colleagues to really look at the way governance works. It's not just about the committee system, it's the way we relate with each other and with officers, the way the code of conduct manages those relationships and whatever. Because I really would recommend, if you are feeling a little lacking of sleep at some point, do have a look at the Spelthorne one, because the way in which that one sets out the seriousness of the way the inspection looked at the governance issues, it kind of is a bit of a wake up to just remember these things matter. And it also matters because if you do end up getting the attention of government, they send somebody along to have a look at you, it's not cheap. There's a big financial risk in that. I think Tower Hamlets were facing 7-figure sums related to their inspection. And ultimately, and I know for different reasons, we're talking about the powers of this council and the powers of local government on Wednesday. What we don't want to find ourselves in the situation is that government might decide actually it wants to exercise a different piece of legislation to remove the power away from us to make certain decisions. So I think it's really important that we kind of have it on record that we've had attention to that. And I know our external auditors will look to how this committee has recognised that risk in looking at the register, and obviously the role that we play through to the remainder of our 30-something colleagues as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I don't really have any questions. I share Councillor Critchison's concern, and I'm sure all of the committee, about the number of high, as it were, ratings, and look forward. I know it's not easy, but look forward to perhaps those ratings coming down in the next report. I mean, is there anything that we should be alarmed by or concerned by? I mean, when I see a high rating, it does concern me, but can we rest assured, which I think we can from your report, that as far as one can mitigate the situation, it is being mitigated?
Absolutely, Chair. And by definition, the scores will be high. A lot of the risks that we're looking at within here, or several of the risks that we're looking at here, are longer standing risks that will take a lot of collaborative working and mitigation to reduce down. Some of them will never come down because the impact and the severity, should it occur, will always be that high. So, for example, the pandemic risk is probably managed as well as we can manage, but will not come down from that score, because if it does happen again, then obviously the impact is so huge that the score remains at that level. But the corporate management team do meet regularly. They see this report every month, and they work collaboratively together to reduce scores across the piece in terms of the actions they can take independently and together as a group.
Can I just ask you, with regard, you've referred to the corporate management team. Perhaps it's just me, but it seems a bit of a mysterious group, if, as far as I can see, in the sense that I think the membership may change from time to time. And also, as far as I'm aware, there are no minutes. So I just wondered if it's a very open and transparent team. I must declare, I've had some concern about corporate management team regarding another issue, which I don't want to raise today. But I do think it's important, if I may say so, that it's open and transparent. And perhaps the chief executive could answer the question that, why do we not know, as it were, who the members are from time to time? And also, why are there never any minutes?
Thank you, Chair. The corporate management team are the myself, the directors, and the directors of the various directorates across the council, and they are the members of the corporate management team. I'm more than happy to circulate the terms of reference for the corporate management team so that you can understand what we discuss. We discuss on a regular basis ongoing management and staffing issues for the council, as you would expect any internal officer-based management team to do, and to make sure that as directorates we're sharing information across the council in terms of key council decisions, council policies, changes in policies that this council determines to make, and to ensure that it's implementing decisions that it's made. It's not of itself a decision-making group. It's a managing the delivery of decisions for this council and the staffing arrangements for this council as well. Previously, when corporate management discussed the risk register in advance of it coming to audit, we invited the chair of audit to attend for that item on our corporate management team meeting. I'm more than happy to extend that invitation to yourself, Chair, because I think it'll give you an understanding of how we then debate and discuss the risk register itself.
Thank you. I'm grateful for that. Thank you. I don't know that any committee member has any questions arising out of that at all. Otherwise, can we note the Councillor Garrett?
I will follow through on that. You may have seen in the minutes that actually I think I referred last time to the fact that I'd taken up invitation on more than one occasion to observe corporate management team in this respect. And I think actually that's something that the external auditors appreciated, that I was able to sort of make a statement to them that I was assured that certainly in the context of the risk register, that risk was being taken very, very seriously and being worked that. I think you raised a good point about who is the corporate management team. So, I'm a junkie for the Constitution. Corporate management is referenced throughout the Constitution, and the officers responsible for corporate management are there. And I think you can find the organisational chart elsewhere on the council's website. But given we got a review of the Constitution later, maybe that's something that we could bring into that whole review to really bring out that it is as you would expect, the senior officers of the council coming together to have that overview on how is the council delivering on the decisions that we as councillors have made. I see it no different from many of the other bodies. When I used to work for various employers, I'd go along and report into them. It's whether it's a team of trustees when I've been on that side of things, or the other side as an employee. So I think I would say from having been in your position very recently, I would feel very comfortable that CMT is doing the right job, is the right body to do that job. But I think you bring out a good point that to be absolutely clear on the transparency, that we ensure that there's a proper write-in perhaps into the constitution that the corporate management team comprises these officers.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Thank you. So any other questions, or are we content now to note the report? Looks like we are. Thank you. On agenda item 8, draft statements of accounts, and that's a verbal presentation from the strategic manager of finance.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a few slides to go over here in relation to the 24-25 accounts. I'm going to cover the general position on the external audit, some of the essential elements on the statement of accounts document itself, the outturn position, revenue, capital, reserves, and a brief bit on where we go with the next steps on those 24-25 accounts. So it's been reported in previous meetings, but there's been significant delays around the external audit in recent years. Going back multiple years, some councils have had delays in their accounts. The external auditors went through this in quite a bit of detail at previous meetings. Yeah, many of the accounts went back multiple years. So as part of resetting the system, government intervention came in last autumn and put in a series of proposed backstop dates to rebuild assurance over the whole system. So that brought in this year a 30th of June deadline for draft accounts. And then in the medium term, that 30th of June date remains, but the final backstop date for final accounts, audited accounts, gradually creeps forward as the period of recovery progresses. So for this year, significant improvement in the publishing of accounts, draft accounts by the 30th of June deadline. 80% of councils published on time for that deadline this year, including this council. So the Isle of Wight position, 21-22 was the last fully audited set of accounts, and that was completed in September 23. Through the resetting period so far, we've had limited audit work on 22-23 and 23-24, which, like a lot of other councils, has resulted in a disclaimed opinion. And those disclaimed opinions, I think EY went through it at the last meeting, they're likely to continue as the period of recovery progresses over a number of years. So there's statement of accounts requirements. It's a statutory document. It's about 150 odd pages in total. It's required under the accounts and audit regulations. It's heavily sort of supported by the CITFA Code of Practice. So they provide a lot of the templates and information. As it said on the previous slide, the requirements for this financial year statement of accounts are draft by the 30th of June, and then final audited version to be published at the end of Feb next year. The content must include these three main areas, and it's very prescribed about what we should include in the format of the information. So firstly, the core financial statements. Alongside those, there's a set of detailed notes. I think there's about 50 notes that go alongside those. A narrative report. So that's a sort of it's supposed to be a slightly easier read of the financial and performance position. And then to complete the pack is the annual governance statement. So that gets published as part of the pack, and that came to this committee in July, the draft version did. So the core financial statements include these main areas: the comprehensive income and expenditure statement, the Cs, movement in reserves statement, the MERS, the balance sheet with all the assets, liabilities and reserves, and the cash flow statement as well. In addition to that, the expenditure and funding analysis tries to make it a bit friendlier in terms of correlating between international financial reporting standards and local government legislation. So the format of the Cs, income and expenditure statement, matches the council's reporting structure for the year concerned, which was portfolio based back then. The Cs is a document with presented in the accounting format and is therefore not directly comparable with the budget information. There's things like the depreciation charges and pension adjustments that go through in the accounts that aren't part of the budget information. So there's ultimately it's the same information but presented for different requirements. So the revenue outturn position against the budget is something that's summarised in the narrative report, part of the accounts. And the position was disclosed in there, and it showed significant pressures in areas such as social care, with some offsetting by planned use of contingency. This resulted in a net 3.5 million underspend, which was specifically used to replenish reserves. Again, in the narrative report, it also includes the capital spend. Total spend in 24-25 was 21 million, which is in the same region as the 26 million that we had in 23-24. You can see how the capital is funded at the bottom there, and by far the vast majority of it is funded from specific capital grants. So the reserves, they show on the balance sheet, and there's associated notes with detail in the accounts, and they're split between usable and unusable. Although termed usable, most of it is specific or ring fenced for things like grants, cash flow or inflationary risk. And there's a specific note 10 in the accounts that has more detail on the reserves. Unusable reserves are not available to finance future activity as they're not cash backed. They tend to be linked to things like movements in values of assets and liabilities. For this year, there's a couple of specific technical accounting areas that I just thought I'd mention. One is IFRS 16, the International Financial Reporting Standards for leases. So from April 24, this effectively removes the difference between operational and finance leases and moves them from revenue onto the balance sheet. So a minimal net effect, but overall it increases assets and increases creditors. And secondly, another complex area is the pension asset ceiling. So it's a calculation that prevents organisations overstating their surpluses that in effect cannot be accessed because they're part of the pension area. And this area is calculated by our external advisors. In terms of next steps, the public inspection period that we have to have for the draft accounts ran until the end of August. There were no objections received during that period, which is good news. The main part of the external audit started a couple of weeks ago, and it's expected to run into November before that finishes. And the full document is available on the website as it has been since the 30th of June, and members are encouraged to use that draft accounts document as an opportunity for comment and questions. Queries could be submitted direct to me and I can pick those up. So the December committee is expected to be for the authorisation only and the auditor feedback. If anyone's got any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Do we have any, excuse me, thank you, Mr. Downer. Do we have any questions from committee members? Councillor Churchman.
Just to make a comment, we actually seem to be doing very well in this respect. I'm absolutely amazed to hear at the beginning about the number of councils who haven't carried out audits. I mean, how on earth have they got away with it? And if it means congratulations to our audit team, then Chair, I think they are in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Churchman. Yes, I agree that our accounts seem to be in better order than many local authorities. It's perhaps slightly concerning that the external auditors, as raised at the last meeting, weren't able to sign them off, as it were. But that is being remedied, as I understand it, although, as you've said, it's going to take some time to catch up. Do we know when that time is likely to be? I mean, how long does it take to catch up with it?
From the table earlier in the presentation, there's a number of years before they expect to get right up to date. I think the approach from the auditors is to pick off areas at each year's audit to then eventually get to a full rebuilt assurance on the opening balances in the accounts.
And that's the difficulty, as I understand it. They couldn't agree the opening and closing balance of, I forget which year it is now, but a couple of years ago. And it therefore runs on, as I understand it, until they can eventually rectify it, or should I say, at least adjust their findings so that they can now reconcile the figures.
Yes, definitely. It's a full external audit this year, and they will pick off some elements of the opening balances, and then the same will happen next year, and gradually it'll get back up to a full assurance.
Thank you very much. Any Councillor Garrett?
Thank you, Chair. It's slightly out with this committee's remit, perhaps, but I will raise it anyway because there is this reference to the underspend going back to replenishing reserves. We'll all remember. I particularly will remember because for the first time I managed to get an amendment passed to the budget this year that there was a unanimous commitment that the contribution towards capital should first be applied to replenishing the resilience fund. It was a very clear statement. It wasn't just that consideration be given to that it would indeed happen. So I'm just going to raise it here and make sure that that is indeed happening, that the Section 151 officer is applying that resolution of full council through to updating that, uplifting that reserve. Slightly out with of here, but I've got very strong interest in ensuring that that resolution is seen through, and I'm sure it will be.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Unless there are any further questions. Thank you, Mr. Downer, for your report. Thank you. Do we need? Yes. Thank you.
That's me again, Chair. Thank you. So this is a standing item report that comes to nearly all meetings. It's the Q4 Treasury Management Report covering the 24-25 financial year, and it's the final period up to the 31st of March. The content of the report is prepared using a template from our Treasury advisors, Arlene Close. And just to note within it, there's a section on the economic conditions that was as at April 25, nearest to the point in this report. Other than that, it's a noting item just on the daily, quarterly Treasury management position.
Thank you, Mr. Downer. Questions? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. It was a question about number 16.16 in the over the first part of it. You put, in addition to investing in money market funds, the council has advanced a loan to another local authority. I've never heard of that before, so it's just really wanted to know a bit more about that. And is it something we've done before? Is it a usual process? Thank you.
Yes, it's a regular part of Treasury management that local authorities move money between each other to deal with the short-term movements in income and expenditure. So we happen to have one at this period, but there's always something like that going on.
Any other questions? Councillor Garrett?
Yeah, just following on that, would we ever, there's a clear statement of not making loans to a Section 114 authority. Would we ever consider that? And if so, what safeguards would there be on that, given what Section 114 means for an authority that we might presumably be loaning to?
Yeah, so as part of our agreement with Island Close, we get regular information live on the status of counterparties, and it's not something we would do, and we would act on the advice of Island Close at the time. So it's something that's always kept on the radar.
I have a question, if I may, please, which is on relates to page 69 at the bottom of the page, and that also concerns loans. I noticed that there is a credit facility of £5 million to Sovereign Network Homes. Is that normal? My concern is that Sovereign is just one of many housing associations, and it is a housing association which provides homes on the island. And I just wondered, I raised alarm bells to my mind as to whether or not it put the council in a position of conflict of interest if it's lending to one preferred housing association.
When we entered into that arrangement, it was on the advice of our Treasury advisors. It's a Treasury management transaction rather than an investment as such. To date, the option has not been taken up. So although we've entered into that agreement to potentially provide a loan, at the minute the option's not been taken up by Sovereign Housing, and all the time that it's not been taken up, we receive a interest receivable receipt.
Thank you. My concern really is over the, as I say, the conflict of interest point, and if the committee agrees, I would quite like to have further information about that. It also could, it seemed to me, put the conflict of interest, for example, if Sovereign have a planning application and we're financing Sovereign, it doesn't look terribly good, or at least Sovereign itself wouldn't be part of the application, it would be the developer. But by then it's often known that Sovereign is going to be the affordable housing provider. And I think it needs careful consideration as to whether or not we should really be doing that. So I would like some form of report based on how we deal with that potential conflict of interest, and whether or not that conflict of interest is a serious conflict, as I feel it is. But I'll be guided perhaps by the report and by perhaps legal advice. I don't know. Thank you. Churchman.
Yes, I read that with trepidation almost. If I remember correctly, they're based in Basingstoke anyway. They aren't on the island anymore as a force, as they used to be. And I just cannot understand why this council would be offering to lend them money when we have housing providers on the island. And as Councillor Spink said, you know, why this treatment? I'm not a fan of Sovereign. I think their return is something like 20%. And I'm not impressed with the service, etc. But that's beside the point. But why Sovereign? I just do not understand. So I'm be delighted also to see. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Churchman raises an important point as well. Not only does it potentially create a conflict of interest, but it could be seen as sort of preferential treatment. I mean, the other housing associations might wonder why they've not been offered the same form of loan. And I may be wrong, but I think Sovereign, I'm not going to name the developer, but I think Sovereign has a close relationship with one of the main developers on the island. And so I think that needs to be considered. Thank you.
What I would remind committee is this is not the first time that this has come before committee. I've been checking back through extensively. This has been referenced. So I find it a little odd that concerns are now being raised now when this has been reported to this committee and no concerns have been raised. I would be very careful about any sense of us imputing that there's anything untoward about this relationship and relationships with any developers on the island. This seems to be a purely financial, independently advised approach. We've not actually provided that credit facility. It sounds like, I'm sure Mr. Down or others could clarify who has approached who in order to provide this. And there's no sense in the minutes before that there's anything preferential about this to Sovereign. It sounds like a very sensible financial arrangement. If there were a conflict of interest, I'm sure Arlen Close or others would advise us of that. So I'm just going to flag up that we need to be very careful of the words that we use here. And I felt that there was a little bit of a sense of a suggestion that something wasn't quite right here, when in fact this committee has seen this more than once. And it's really, really important that we stay on top of the material. So if you detect a little sense of a sort of concern in my voice, it is that I'm concerned that committee members do need to be on top of what they have seen come before for us. I know some members are of course new to the committee, yourself, Chair, but it is very, very important. It harks back actually to the governance risk issue that I was raising earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. As you say, I wasn't a member of this committee until very recently. I wasn't aware of it. I've not said that there is a conflict of interest or that there's anything improper. I simply raised it. And I think it's something which is properly raised. And I also think this committee's got to be very careful about not raising concerns because of the risk of reputational damage. If we do that, we simply sweep things under the carpet. And I don't think that's the purpose of this committee. So whilst I agree we have to be careful with words, I feel that I was careful with my words, and I feel that it is something that we should have a report on, because if only to keep ourselves in the clear and to enable us, if it is satisfactory, so be it, and if it's not, to take action about it. But I'm not a great believer in hiding things. I know you're not suggesting that, but I'm not a great believer in not airing concerns because it may cause us harm. I take a different view that the more concerns that we air, particularly in this committee and other forms of committee, that it's important that we air these matters, and it shows that we're taking our role seriously. Item number 11, the governance arrangements, and who is it who's going to, let me just check that, who's going to, oh, I do, sorry.
The yearly.
Oh, yes, sorry, I ticked the wrong one. So now, thank you for that. Now we're on item number 10, the Treasury Management Report, quarterly report, pages 77 to 98. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see why they look very similar, because
We may not now set the record, I'm afraid, but still.
the second report follows a very similar theme to the previous one. The only thing that is different is the period which it covers, which is the Q1 period up to the end of June. Again, this report is supported by the template from Marling Close. The narrative around the economic conditions is as at July. So again, the format is similar. I don't think there's any big areas to highlight. It's a noting report based on the quarter end position.
Thank you, Mr. Downer. Questions from the committee? Councillor Garrett looks as if he is about to ask a question. I don't. Sorry.
Genuinely, I'm not at this
Okay.
moment, Chair.
I don't have any questions. So it looks as if we don't have any questions for you on that matter, Mr. Downer, and we can note that report. And now it is now the item 11, the governance arrangements, please.
Are you ready for me to start, Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay, super duper. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak on this item. As you recall from the previous meeting, we indicated that we would be bringing a report to this committee to pick up on the report that went to annual council with the for the agreement of the new constitution. It was requested within that report that we would undertake a post-implementation review, which we call phase 3, and that sits within the remit of the Audit and Governance Committee. So subsequent to that, and as mentioned in our last committee meeting, we have been undertaking the preparations for that work to take place. But as you'll be aware, subsequent to that decision to undertake the post-implementation review, along came the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, which gave us an indication that we would need to return to a leader and cabinet system. So as part of our planning, we've been taking that into account in terms of the preparation and the material that's in front of you today. So officers have been undertaking a significant amount of work in terms of that preparation. And the main part of the report refers to a project initiation document, which is set out at Appendix 1 in your report. And this gives a fairly detailed layout of what the proposals are, both in terms of delivery and how we manage to, and how we intend to manage the governance of this particular piece of work. You'll see that we've identified 4 key work streams that will form part of the work for this phase 3 review. So the first one being around governance, and that in recognition that one of the things we said we wanted to do as part of the post-implementation review was to see how well things were going. And clearly what we will want to do now that we are aware of a further change ahead of us is that we seek to learn from the current system that we've got in place and see what we can take from it to placed back into the leader and cabinet model. And the other part of this work stream will be to pick up on what we call the snagging list. So there were a few things that we were not able to finalise prior to the approval of the new constitution in May. So you'll also see in the project initiation document, one of the appendices refers to the snagging list. And those are the pieces of work that we will be undertaking as part of that process. You'll see, Chair, that as requested, we have included there references to the planning protocol. So that's included as part of that work package. The second one is a second work stream is around administration. So looking at the practical arrangements that have been put in place in terms of managing meetings and processes. And again, with a view to seeking if there's anything that we can do to streamline things further, and indeed take any lessons from the existing system back into a leader and cabinet model. Third one is communications and engagement, which is fairly straightforward in terms of this will be about making sure that we keep relevant people informed, that we engage relevant people in the work that needs to be done. Workstream 4 is around learning and development, and that's again building upon what was done previously to help us implement the committee system, take some learning from that, and also look at what we need to do to help people transfer back to a leader and cabinet system when it happens. And then the workstream 5 is the transition to the leader and cabinet model. And that'll be the work that needs to be undertaken to relook at our constitution and convert it back to the leader and cabinet model. One of the things the report proposes is that as part of the supporting the work, the delivery programme, we are seeking your permission to re-establish a member officer forum using the Audit and Governance Committee members to help provide a steer on the work that needs to be done. And there's also, as an appendix, the terms of reference that go with that proposal to help us along our way. And then finally, what we've asked the committee to consider is a revised map of committee functions, which we have updated as a result of just some fine tweaking or some omissions that we found were missing from the version that was put forward in May of this year. So in conclusion, Chair, what we're asking the committee to do today is to approve the project initiation document and programme management arrangements, to approve that the Audit and Governance Member Forum be re-established and the terms of reference that go with it, to approve the revised map of committee functions, which we'll recommend to full council, and finally to note the equality impact assessment for the work that we've identified is needed to be done. Obviously happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mrs. Chand. Questions from the committee?
I'm going to, Chair. I've lived and breathed some of this over the last year and a piece, and I take my share of the responsibility of where things are deficient in our constitution as well. You can read something countless times and still miss things, I've discovered. So the process that Mr. Chand has laid out worked, I thought, very effectively by drawing on Audit and Governance Committee members' expertise and connections through to groups where they are in groups did work well. It allowed for some very constructive discussions around certain points. I think things like the recovery procedure, that was an interesting one as to where full council would regain its right to make a decision and things like that. It is, of course, really, for me, very disappointing that the government has chosen to return us to a cabinet system, but I think we can learn from the process we went through in terms of what we as members wanted to achieve with the committee system to make that cabinet system meet those things around transparency and inclusiveness, particularly. We're not going to be alone in this. There are a good number of other councils that are going to have to revert to cabinet systems. So maybe, I'm sure Ms. Shanton and her team will have this in mind to go to places like Sutton, which have had a committee system for a long time. One thing I'm just going to float now, the potential for us to actually look at establishing local area committees, which are possible under a cabinet system. So we could retain some of the best aspects of local decision making from a committee system, whilst leaving the strategic, if as government exists, to cabinet. I would note I am not vice chair of this committee. There is a reference to me being vice chair of the committee in the senior users part of the
Sorry.
I declined that.
Apologies.
No problem. Councillor Critchison is indeed vice chair for that. I think one thing I would stress throughout this whole process, and I think from talking to my colleagues, is stressing, whilst we are in a committee system, that the purpose of a committee system is that no member has a power other than what given to them statutorily. There are one or two members who do have statutory powers and responsibilities. You yourself, Chair, will have a time to sign off on things. And I think one of the things that has happened in establishing the committee system is some are finding it difficult to adjust to the idea that we don't individually have any powers. The flip side, I'd say, is encouraging that feeling that it is a constructive relationship with officers, and officers are having due regard to particularly the views of the chairs of service committees in terms of developing agendas, putting items on there. One thing I would like to see, if there is a way that we can achieve it, is given just the way the cycle of full council and this committee works, that anything that we informally might bring forwards, that we could circumvent it having to come back to A&G, that we could perhaps delegate to an appropriate officer, or otherwise it is taken as such, that it can go direct to full council. Because I think there are certain things we'd like to get sorted out by November's full council and not have to wait for December's Audit and Governance Committee and January's full council. But certainly I would approve of this approach as a way of achieving that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Churchman.
I think the biggest problem is the government haven't set a date. So are they going to insist that it's 2026 or it's going to be 2027? It's just so much up in the air. I feel sorry for Claire because when we start altering things or tightening them up, how long will it be for? And of course, what I'm also very concerned about is the cost of going back to a cabinet system. The only thing I would say that the committee system did something which had been badly needed. Our constitution was brought back into what it should be. I think it had got a bit outdated, hadn't been looked at for some time. So hopefully the constitution won't change that much when we go back to a cabinet system. Perhaps Claire or the Chief Executive would like to comment on that. Thank you.
Sorry, I was waiting to see if Wendy wanted to say anything, but yes, no, absolutely, and thank you for that, Vanessa. That's an important point to make. It was an opportunity to refresh our constitution, and you know we are clear that what we've got currently is a fully compliant constitution. Which serves us much better than we did. Not to say it's perfect, but it's certainly better than the position we had previously in terms of its provisions. So our view is don't break anything that's already fixed, and that we will be taking back into the Leader and Cabinet model our existing constitution, but we will be refreshing it in light of those things that need to be changed because it is a Leader and Cabinet system, and anything else that the review identifies as being good practice or things that we've learned that would benefit from further refinement.
Thank you. Councillor Christensen.
Just want to make a comment really that thank you for the work on this, Claire and others, because it is quite a comprehensive kind of time map for us to detail out how we would go about the changes. But it is unfortunate that we've had such a little time in the committee system to really kind of test it out and sort of stretch it and see how it would actually work in practice. But as you say, there is no time limit, so this looks quite adaptable to what we might need to change as things goes on. So thank you for that, really. And it was really good to read through that and have a kind of clear way to deal with things. So thank you.
Super, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question, perhaps a statement and then a question, I'm not sure really, but when the Constitution was revised to take into account the change to the committee system, whatever one wants to call it, the working group seemed to do quite a lot of, which wasn't limited to audit and governance members, seemed to take quite a large part in the drafting of documents. And for example, I was asked, although I wasn't a member, to make a contribution to the planning section. I wonder if it would be possible to reinstate that working group, including members who aren't members of this committee, and if there could be a procedure whereby when certain areas are decided to change, so for example, the snagging list, that the wording comes to that working group so that the working group can look at it and then perhaps either report back to the committee, or if not at a formal committee meeting, if I'm on the working group, I'll be appraised of what's going on. And also we can then report back to, for example, full council when it does eventually go to full council. So could we include in the structure, I mean, I'm not sure if that's the same system as is meant by the member forum that's referred to. I imagine it is. So could we have a framework, however, that, as I say, that if we'll be guided, as it were, by officers, of course, but if the suggested changes and wording could be given to the working group in a draft form, and then the working group can suggest any changes and make recommendations. So I just wanted to highlight that I think that's an important part of the procedure. I don't know.
Yes, of course. Yeah, no, absolutely fine with all of that, and that's exactly what's being proposed for the officer forum, as set out in the terms of reference, which are set out as an appendix. And I've just double checked on the what we've put in there with regards to membership. And we've said that other councillors by invitation on matters of specific interest that cannot be addressed by group members. So there is a facility there. If there is a particular issue that any councillor wants to work with us on, then we can invite them in for that piece of work. But you're absolutely right. The intention is that the forum will give a steer as to the work that needs to be done. The forum doesn't have any decision-making powers, so I must make that very clear. That it makes overall it goes via audit and governance committee through full council in terms of the approval route of any proposed changes.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. I just wonder if it has to be, if we could consider that it's not only if there's a specific expertise that can't be provided from elsewhere, as it were, from within the audit and governance to be a member. We're quite a small committee, sort of 5 of us here today. We're quite a small committee, and to form a working group limited really to this committee when it comes to drafting constitutions, etc. we may be
Officers
criticising-
will be doing the drafting, Councillor Spink, and it will be for the committee to review. The purpose of the committee is that it's politically proportionate. And so we would hope that you act as a conduit to other members of your groups to be able to filter in and out any of the proposed changes. I think the danger is if we get too larger a group, it becomes a bit unmanageable.
Well, I think that the working group should have some input into the drafting. And my understanding is, and I'll be corrected by others, particularly Councillor Garrett, because he was in chair at the time. My understanding is that the working group did do quite a lot of the drafting. And indeed, I wasn't in the working group, but was invited to actually draft some of the planning changes. So I think that it's important that the working group has a role in drafting. And I accept, of course, that the final recommendation comes from this committee and also then to full council. But I do think the working group should have a more active role than simply, as it were, agreeing or not the changes suggested.
I mean, I don't have any issue at all, Councillor Spink, with members of the working group providing input in any way. The issue for me is that this is a governance set of arrangements, and so it's important that there is a view or advice indeed given by officers as part of the preparation. But there's no issue at all with anyone who wishes to contribute to the drafting of the work that needs to be done.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I can see your concern on this, Chair. It did work in such a way that certain areas were actually pretty much drafted by councillors. I wonder if we might therefore just recommend in the terms of reference that where under scope that the group will review and comment on draft proposals prepared by officers, and then make it sort of comma and make such other recommendations for considerations in the drafting of the constitution, so that there is a very positive reference to members who may have gone out and looked at other constitutions and thought that looks good. But it certainly worked in this way, and there were times when there was very active drafting. But do recall that the constitution is something like 300 pages long. The heavy lifting is done by the officers, and rightly so. And it also has to be something that's legally compliant as well.
Yeah.
We can't just put. I'd love to put lots.
And
of
hopefully we won't have so much heavy lifting to do this time.
But maybe if we just slightly amend that terms of reference to just be really clear.
Happy to do that. Yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that's very excuse me, very helpful, Councillor Garrett. Thank you. So with that amendment, are we able to approve, all of us, the recommendation? Yes. Thank you. So that's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Work plan, item 13. Does anyone have any comments on the work plan, pages 151 onwards?
All I would say, Chair, is there is a lot to do. And my advice to you, because I never took my own advice, is start thinking about your chair's annual report now, because the time does creep up on things. So, but that's a little jokey aside on that. But there is a lot to do, and given that we will have those governance issues coming through, there will be plenty to keep us busy, I would hope, and that out of mischief.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I don't have any comments on the work plan as it's set out Does anyone have any view or comment? No? Okay, thank you. Well, thank you to everyone for their contribution and for assisting this meeting, which I think was a good and very useful meeting. So I declare, as it were, that the meeting is closed now. Thank you.